Go Premanandi. So I had a terrible time getting online, which is why I'm late, and I have a feeling there's going to be a bumpy ride on the internet today. That's just what it seems like. So probably a lot of freezing on the video, and maybe even my program may shut the video off. I'll have to tolerate that. Wednesday's class discussing an interesting topic about a story about a guru who was gasping and struggling, fighting to get up, get out of the water. And the guru said, that is how much you must want God. If you want guru, you must want God that much. And so one devotee said that's abusive. And I said, well, I never thought of it like that. So I did a little of investigation about the origins of the story and had some discussion with one of my godbrothers, so I wanted to relate that to you. At the beginning of the class, I think we'll discuss it, and then I mentioned that there were a lot of questions that were coming up, a lot of discussion on this topic, and how sometimes when we hear about pure devotional service, it can discourage us because it seems so difficult, far away, impossible. And then subsequently a devotee wrote and said, it seems that there's a lot of negativity in Krishna conscious philosophy, or there can be. So I thought we could discuss all of those things. But first we will have kirtan, and then if you have any questions, or if any questions were saved from the last class, or there's a way to find out by going to that video and seeing what the questions were, then please put them up there. Like Tanya or Nadia, is that possible? You go to Wednesday's video and then you go to the end of it and you see the questions. Govinda, 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 Govinda. Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. Sri Radha, Govinda. We have Krishna, Govinda. Hari Murari. He Nata Narayana Bhaja Vasudeva. Govinda. Hey Govinda. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Vijanavallabha Girivardhari. Vijanavallabha Girivardhari. Shodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Shodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tirvana Chari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Git Janavallabha Girivardhari Git Janavallabha Girivardhari Shodhanandana Brajajanaranja Shodhanandana Brajajanaranja Jamana Tira Vanachari Jamana Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhu Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Govinda. Okay. So, for those of you who come late, I had a discovery this morning that the internet seems to be working slower than normal. So, if you see me freezing, it's not ecstatic symptoms, although that's always possible. But more likely, it is the very slow computer, a very slow connection. And I just hope you can hear me. So, there was a story we told on Wednesday, which created a very interesting discussion, and I want to continue it, because I was thinking about it, and I wanted to discuss it further. So I told this story, which I had heard, and I wasn't sure where I heard it, and I had a intuition that I didn't hear it from Srila Prabhupada, that it was probably a Buddhist story. And that was the story of a man who goes to a guru, says, I want to be a disciple. The guru says, why? And he says, I want God. I want to know God. I want to serve God like that. So the guru said, come with me, brought him to a river and dunked him in the river. Right up to the point where he was struggling to get out, and the guru let him out. And he said, well, when you want God that badly, then you will get God, or you could be my disciple, or both, something like that. So I didn't say anything on Wednesday because that story just came to mind, and I hadn't really heard that story in a long time, maybe decades. So I went to look up the story, and my intuition was correct. It was a Buddhist story. It's a very Buddhist story, and I'll explain why in a moment. But they did a very interesting thing on the site where the story was told, and they asked people, what did you get from this story? They just told the story. There was no commentary. What did you get from the story? And of the 20, 30 people, of 20, 30 comments I read, maybe there were like 10 different realizations that they got from the story. And one or two of which was the mention that, well, this is a story of a student being drowned by his guru. It seems like this guru is bogus. So a couple of things like that, which was how this discussion began, because Kaylee brought it up. She's a teacher and said, this is abusive. So then I wrote to the head of the CPO in the U.S. I said, this is a story. What do you think? And she said, I don't think you should tell stories like that because it is abusive. And I said, okay. Then I thought, well, let me write my godbrother. He's a professor. He teaches religion. He teaches Buddhism. And then he reminded me of something which I didn't want to say because I actually thought it was a true story. Of course, I promised Kaylee I would not drown her, but maybe tie her to a tree if needed to teach a lesson. Probably not even do that. Happy to say I've never drowned a student to teach a lesson, and I never will. So you don't have to worry about me doing that. And then he said a few things. He said, well, first we should understand this is just an allegory, an analogy. It didn't really happen. It's just in Buddhism they use stories like this that are not real. Okay. So that's good to know. It didn't happen. It's not an example for future gurus that go to drastic measures to teach lessons. And then he said something interesting. He said that if you study the Buddhist tradition and also somewhat of the Hindu tradition, he said, this is his words, he said there's a method of teaching which is called basically shock. You shock people. You shock them into understanding. So he said this was an example of shock teaching. Of course, it relieves us to know that, according to him, and there's no reason not to believe this, that this didn't really happen. It was just a story, a made-up story to illustrate a point. And he said in Buddhism, there are many stories, and sometimes even Prabhupada will say things to shock you, just like, wow, because sometimes we need shocking. Then he told another story. Maybe you know this story. The guru asked two disciples, what would you do if you saw Buddha walking down the street? And one said, I would, get the dust of his feet. And others said, I would pray to him like that. And the guru said, I would shoot him. So he said, that's an example of what they do. Like they shake you up to get you to think. So he said, this story was done for that purpose. Shakes you up and makes you realize, yeah, okay, I need to have a strong desire. But then he said, it illustrates something about guru-disciple relationship. And people mention this in their commentary. So I promised Kelly not to drown her, but maybe if she misbehaved, tie her to a tree. So he was saying, I was joking with him then, and he was saying, well, one of the things that this story shows is if there's trust, then you can do so many things. And he gave the example that, sometimes they do these exercises where you have 4 people behind you and they say, we'll catch you, just lean back. And these are your team members. And so when you have trust, you lean back. If they don't catch you, you're going to damage your head and your neck, and maybe you're permanently damage your brain, and who knows, right? So it's an exercise in building trust with the people you're interacting with. So he made a nice point, which I agree with. And he said, it's a question of trust between the guru and disciple, because someone can see this story and think, yes, if the disciple has 100% trust in the guru, then whatever the guru does, the disciple knows this is the best thing. And he said, the guru must be doing something for my benefit or teaching me something. But without that trust, a guru would never do anything. Of course, a guru doesn't do this, but just for the sake of discussion, a guru would not do anything if the disciple didn't have that trust. So he was talking about, what was he saying? About trust. Trust of the disciple in the guru, and trust of the guru in the disciple. So sometimes the guru will put a disciple through some kind of trial because the guru knows that the disciple will be able to successfully go through it. So an outsider may say, well, I wouldn't want my guru to put me through that. And probably your guru wouldn't, knowing that it would be too much for you. In other words, your guru wouldn't trust that you would be able to handle it, so he wouldn't do it. So he said, these are some things you could learn. So But the real issue was we're bringing up stories and that basically seem to be making abuse acceptable. And so I took that point deeply, and I appreciated it. And I think it's true that we have to be careful in telling such stories. And if we do, which I didn't do because I didn't know, say that it's a story, it didn't really happen, it's meant to illustrate a point, we don't recommend gurus doing this. I think that's important. So that was a good lesson for me. And why it's a good lesson is because there's more sensitivity to these issues now today than when I was younger, and I have to be more conscious of that. When we were younger, we were very revolutionary, and anything which wasn't mainstream wasn't always so evaluated by its value, but just how much against mainstream culture it was. So sometimes we said things that I think we shouldn't have said, or maybe today if we said would be very disturbing to people. But in those days, it wasn't generally so disturbing or disturbing at all, because that was the mood, kind of just shake things up. So I have to be personally more aware. I think we all do, but maybe the younger devotees are maybe more sensitive to how people see and feel, and things you say that maybe rub people in the wrong way that previously didn't, but that didn't be, for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm not justifying that what we're saying was right then, and it's still right, but now people see it as wrong. No, it's just, we have to be sensitive, that's for sure. I can give you an example of this. Indians have great reverence for Mahatma Gandhi. And it's a sensitive issue when most of your congregation is Indian. This is a story from South Africa. Most of the congregation at this time, 1982, was Indian. And Indians, many Indians, if not all Indians, have great respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Prabhupada also had respect for him in terms of his social policies and cottage industries, people living in villages and simplifying. Prabhupada really liked that. But in terms of his understanding of Krishna and the Gita, it was very off. And Prabhupada, of course, his whole point was that just trying to change the world through politics it's not going to do it. So he would criticize Gandhi now and then, but usually it was done privately. But even privately, he said that he appreciated Gandhi for certain things he did. But Prabhupada was a bit relentless in his critique of leaders who didn't understand the purpose of life. So he kind of didn't really spare anyone unless they understood that life is for developing God consciousness. So I was invited. No, I wasn't invited. I had just arrived in South Africa, and they had Rath Yatra. I don't know how many people were there, 10,000 or something. And one of the leaders of our movement who was supposed to come down couldn't come down. And, he was advertised. And they didn't want to disappoint people. So they asked me to give a lecture. And they said, well, people don't know you, so we can build you up as so they won't be let down that the leader didn't come. They're all waiting to hear. And you can give a lecture, and we'll say, kind of build you up like this is a real blessing for you that I'm here and I'm going to speak to you. And so Prabhupada gave the example that Mahatma Gandhi made a mistake when he was saying that we all make mistakes, and he was shot in public and warned not to go, but he went anyway, and he was shot and killed. So Prabhupada gives that example. So I said, just like Mahatma Gandhi, and the devotees thought, oh no, he's going to put down Mahatma Gandhi, and these 10,000 Indians that are at our festival are never going to see us again. They're going to join some other movement. Fortunately, I didn't say that, but they told me that afterwards. They said, you can't say that. And Krishna just kind of helped me understand, I shouldn't say that, although consciously I didn't really know how devastating it would be. It's not my nature also to put down public figures. So, but anyway, that's a case in point. It was a new country. I didn't know. And so if I would have said that, it would have been a disaster. So yes, we have to be careful. Then another point came up, Krishna Karshani brought up about how when you hear about these very elevated levels of pure bhakti, you can become discouraged thinking that like this is like so far away, I'll never get there. And then I got a letter also saying that it seems that Bhaktivedanta Thakur is expressing a lot of negativity, and I like to be positive, and the negativity doesn't help me. And it seems like Krishna consciousness or some of the preachers of Krishna consciousness can be quite negative. And I was giving an example how maybe 6 months ago we had some problem with our car. So we brought it into the dealer, it's a Toyota, and they said, to repair the car, it needs A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, X, X, Y, Z, A1, B1, like that. How much? $2,900. I'm thinking, I don't really want to spend $2,900 on this car. Really, at that time, I really didn't have. I really couldn't afford to just put that out at that moment. It wouldn't have been a good idea. And so we were, making a monthly payment on the car of something. And he said, he came back and he said, but, we can get you in a new car. We can get you in a new car. I said, well, if you can get me in a new car for about the same monthly payments I'm paying on the old car, then we'll do it. But interestingly, when I left the house, I told my daughter we're coming back with a new car. I just kind of, I don't know why I said it, but I kind of felt that. So anyway, we got the new car, which was, in many ways, superior to the old car, especially because it's newer. It had certain features like a camera when you're backing up and wireless connection from Bluetooth connection from your phone and this and that. So my wife and I are driving in the car, and in comparison to the old car, this was much better. And we're saying, yeah, the old car was this, and the old car was that, and the old car was this, and the old car was that. So it was negative talk, but it really didn't have a negative effect on us. It had a positive effect because we were in the new car. So talking about how bad the old car was made us happier to be in the new car. So the negative, what was negative talk, people might say, oh, you're so negative, but the negative talk was actually glorifying the car. So what we saw in what we discussed in the song, what we saw is that the negative feelings Bhaktivinoda Thakur had was increasing his hunger, his thirst for Krishna. So it was actually positive. So we have to be able to see it. We have when the negative creates the positive, just like good. If you have a good appetite, if you're hungry, food tastes good and you digest it better. So although hunger could be seen as a negative, it's actually a positive. So he's kind of showing this hunger by seeing how far he is from Krishna, or at least playing that part. And then we see he's begging, weeping, Krishna, Krishna, I want you, give me your mercy. So it's the negativity intensified the mercy, and the intensification of the prayer of the mercy is the positive. So that's one point. And then I told this devotee, I said, well, you can process. You have to, if you really need to have a more positive outlook, if that's what inspires you. Because some devotees are actually inspired by negativity. You may say they have problems. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But a lot of devotees are inspired by just seeing how bad things are. It just says, I'm so happy I'm a devotee because I'm just reminded why I became a devotee. Things are bad. But you can process Krishna consciousness in so many ways, right? So you may hear negativity, but you may say, yes, that's true for non-devotees. But, like when you hear about Grihastha life in the 5th canto, it's really talking about materialistic Grihastha life. Now you could say, my Grihastha life resembles their Grihastha life. Well, that's, your fault that it does. But if you're reading about materialistic grihastas who are having so many problems, and if you have a good marriage with your husband or wife, you can think, yeah, Krishna consciousness has helped me have a good marriage. So reading the negative then becomes positive. So it's all about how you want to process things, like we've discussed a million times, how when you see your faults, you think, oh, I'm so bad, it's hopeless, useless. That's one way to process it. Another way to process it is, at least I'm a devotee, despite Krishna let me in the back door, despite all these bad qualities. So I'm seeing the bad qualities. It could make me appreciate Krishna consciousness, that even in spite of them, I'm able to be a devotee and he lets me do devotional service, or I could just become discouraged. So it's really up to you how you process it, because it's true. If you see the negative, there is a lot of negative in Krishna consciousness. Just go to the 5th canto if you want some negativity. Yeah. Do you need a little negativity in your life? If you're missing it, well, I've got just the remedy. Go to the 5th canto. It tells you exactly what the material world is like. A reminder, a blunt reminder, in case you forgot. There's birth, old age, disease, and death. And in case you forgot, people are struggling and working hard. Well, the 5th canto will remind you in graphic detail, all the way up to the point of death and after death. So, okay, and so it describes a person who's sinful and how they suffer. Well, that's pretty negative. And you read it and you think, Prabhupada saved me from that. So for you, it's positive. I once heard a class which was maybe on the 5th canto. Just about how bad material life is and how horrible this is and horrible that is, And I was thinking, what if somebody just came to the temple and heard that class? They would think we are crazy. We're sitting around talking about how bad things are. Like, what is wrong with these people? And at the end of the class, everyone was saying, oh, that was a really good class. That was a really blissful class. We just described how bad everything is. And devotees are saying, that was a really blissful class. Okay, so how is that possible? It's possible because of the way you process it. Why was it blissful? Because it was inspiring me and reminding me why I became a devotee, because I came out of that world, and inspiring me to be more Krishna conscious, because if I'm not, that's the option. So it's really about how you process it. And then Krishna Karshani's point was how you could become discouraged, reading about these like elevated levels, which seem to be light years or days of Brahma away from us. And I think it's a question of how you process it. This is, I see it at least one way of processing it, which is how I see it. I see that, okay, these great devotees are exhibiting these qualities of pure bhakti, and they're showing us what's possible or what's available, or they're showing us what we will come to. And they're not saying, look, there's something wrong with you if you don't feel like I'm feeling like right now. That's not the message. That may be the message we give ourselves. Like, well, there's something wrong with you because you don't feel like that. Well, technically speaking, there is something wrong with us. But subjectively speaking, it's not... Bhaktivinoda Thakur wasn't thinking, okay, I'm going to write this song so everyone will feel like there's something wrong with him. I'm going to write this song to show what is the sentiment of a pure devotee, to inspire you. Yeah, so somehow or other, if you ever hear about pure bhakti and you get discouraged, ask yourself the question, how can I process this so it inspires me? And Krishna will show you how to become inspired by something that might be discouraging. Just like if you see a devotee who's very successful, you could become discouraged thinking, I'll never be successful like that devotee. And I'm sure you must have had that experience sometime. Or you could become inspired and think, well, if they could do it, why couldn't I do it? That's the other way. They're an inspiration for me. I want to be like them. They're also, their life is very similar to my life before they became devotees. And if they can achieve this level and have these deep realizations, that means it's possible for anyone. So then they become an inspiration. So it's the same event can be very discouraging or very inspiring. So I did a video on YouTube. I don't know if you saw it. But I was saying that what I've learned to do is always process things in a way that they become inspiring. Like, even if it's not, I ask myself, okay, well, how could you see this in a way that would inspire you? In some way, move you forward. I just developed that habit over the years, that whatever is going on, my mind, it like reorganizes things in a way that I could be inspired by this, in some way motivated in Krishna consciousness by what's happening, because I know if I don't do that, I could be easily discouraged by difficult situations. So if we can learn to do that, always kind of reorganize our thinking and say, okay, well, how could this thing, which right now seems to be depressing me or discouraging me, how could I see it in a way that would encourage me? And if you do it enough, you'll begin to automatically do it. Your mind, say, this is depressing. Your mind will like reformat it, and then you go, oh, okay, now if I see it this way, I would be inspired. Or like, this is depressing, how to be inspired? Oh, that's service for me. There's something, we need to do something, because there's a problem in our movement, or I see the problem myself. This is depressing. Oh, I need to do something. Where's the inspiration? I'm going to have to, I really need to chant better rounds, because this is a problem I don't want to carry with me. So we can see it that way. Okay, so I'm going to go back, because I think I stimulated some discussion, which is good. That's what a teacher is supposed to do. So apparently no questions from the previous class. Meg Vinyasa says, yes, when a devotee said to his students that if you don't chant, you have no right to read Bhagavad Gita and you are demoniac. I heard something like that the other day. I wouldn't say that. Meg, can you remind me of that? Because it sounds really familiar, but I can't place it. Or what are you responding to? What did I say you're responding to? Or do we have this discussion? It sounds very familiar. It's regarding your topic today. Yeah. Can you remind me of the story? It just sounds familiar. Or maybe there's nothing to remind me of. Okay. My connection is so bad, I have to wait 5-10 seconds to scroll. Question, how to discipline a child at Gurukul? Prabhupada, spare the rod, spoil the child. The rod is equal. You have seen stick in Dallas? Yes. I told them, keep the stick, but don't beat them. Like, just show it. That is sufficient. Should not be used. Similarly, as Yasodamaya was doing with Krishna, that much. Yasodamaya had a stick, but she wasn't going to use it. This is the old system. Krishna was also shown the stick. Prahlad Maharaj also shown the stick by his teacher. Show the stick, but don't do it. Don't use it, yeah. However, I have heard of some traditions where if the disciple is misbehaving, the guru will slap him. I don't know how hard, or just like this, so it doesn't hurt, or what. And the disciples appreciate it. So different cultures. Kamaniya, thank you for coming, Kamaniya. Thank you, Prabhu, for this deep lesson regarding the story of the Guru drowning their student. I have a sensitivity to ISKCON lingo, terms like smashing in relation to defeating others with philosophy. Even this term defeating, I'm adverse to. These terms to me feel violent and also far from the mood of humility that we're encouraged to strive for. Did Srila Prabhupada use these terms frequently? How might he feel about using those terms today? I think he used the term defeat. Smash, I think the devotees use that. Prabhupada, you smashed him. I guess part of what we're dealing with is that, when Prabhupada was here, everybody was young and vivacious and kind of a little bit arrogant. The younger you are, the kind of more arrogant you are. I can't say all the devotees were like that, but some. I don't remember. I would have to check. From my memory, it was more the devotees used that word smashed. But I don't think Prabhupada used the word defeat in a derogatory sense because traditionally there would be debates, philosophical debates. And the point was to defeat, and the defeated person became your disciple. So there was a culture there. There was like rules, there was etiquette. So it wasn't like you're trying to put the other person down. You're trying to establish Siddhanta. And so if you can establish Siddhanta, the culture was such that if you were defeated, meaning this person explained things you didn't know, explained it more logically, showed you were wrong, then you were defeated, and then you become his disciple. So the word defeated is more in the context of a debate according to rules and regulations. If Prabhupada used the word defeat, he meant expose the faults, not like a one-up on them. Expose the faults so they understand that they're misguided. So that's my sense of how he used it. Also he say, we have to show them where the ignorance is, so on and so forth. So that's there also. But I also feel the way you do, Kamaniya, because I've seen this. And it's not really Lord Chaitanya's mood to go out and defeat, although he did defeat, but not defeat in the sense of like a team beating another team, but defeat their material existence, kind of, So I've always felt that our mission is not to defeat, but to give mercy. And in giving mercy, I may have to defeat somebody if they're arguing with me, but my purpose is not to defeat them so that I'm better, but my purpose is to help them understand. So as long as that's the mood, to help them understand, then we're in the right mood. But the word smash is, that's like a bit over the top. That's like kind of like, I just destroyed him. Like, let's go out, Prabhu, let's get some books and go out and destroy people. I don't think that's why Prabhupada came to America, to teach us how to destroy people. Let's go smash some Mayavadis into the cement today. Yeah, I smashed him. He had no argument. Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't want to cover anything up. That definitely was the mood for many preachers. Oh, okay. I hope that answers your question. Sorry, said something I missed. Yeah, or maybe I didn't miss. No, hold on. I have to go back up. Yeah, okay. So I hope that answers your question. I think that all these words and so forth and situations and ideas and stories have to be processed within a context of what Krishna consciousness is. So if we understand the context that Lord Chaitanya is the manifestation of Radharani's compassion. So the word like smash and compassion kind of, they're like, they belong in different parts of the city, so to speak. So, and if Prabhupada ever did use the word, it wasn't in the sense of I'm better. It would be in the sense of that his Maya was smashed. Now at least he can come to his senses. So it's all motivated by compassion. So as long as it's motivated by compassion, then we're good. And if it's not motivated by compassion, even if you don't use the word smash and defeat, then, you're just motivated by ego. You want to be compassionate so people will like you and love you. That's fine if that's your strategy for preaching, but just to gratify your ego, that wouldn't be good. So you could err on that side also. So it's always important to get the mood right. And once you get the mood right, people can feel your mood. And when you get the mood right, if you say the wrong thing, they don't take it that way, generally. If they don't know your mood, then you're misunderstood. And you say something slightly controversial and people get upset. But when they understand you and they know your mood, they know your heart, then if you happen to say that, oh, we defeated him, they would understand you weren't trying to destroy somebody. You were trying to bring them closer to self-realization. So, yeah. So, Jyotirmai says, what actually makes me reflect a lot is that sometimes I manage to do amazing things with zero effort. Other times, the most easy thing seems impossible. There's a verse like that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is really stressful because it doesn't allow me to program my devotional service. Well, yeah. Well, at least half of it's good. And it definitely shows you're not the controller, which is good. And maybe some things Krishna doesn't want you to do. Or maybe now is not the time to do them. Could be so many things to meditate on, right? It's always, we don't like not being the controller. It's difficult to be out of control. But it's actually really, really good for us sometimes when we're not in control because we get frustrated. And then we just, at a certain point, stand back and just go, well, Krishna's teaching me I'm not in control. Like, I keep forgetting. Didn't even try, and this happened, and all day I'm trying, and everything's breaking and falling apart, and nothing's going right, and I'm forgetting everything. Yeah, I'm reminded I'm not the controller, and I'm reminded that, sometimes difficult things become easy by His mercy. It's always good to have reminders, isn't it? So Jairati says, lovely way to try and see things in an inspiring way. Yeah, this is, I don't know, maybe I should write a book like my 10 secrets of how I, deal with the world and use it to become Krishna conscious. This is definitely one of them. But I think this came through a long practice, study, and also, I think from necessity. I think really, probably essentially where it came from is just the realization that if I want to be Krishna conscious, or you can apply this to anything, whether it's spiritual or material. If you want something, don't ever allow yourself to think in a way that would work against you getting it. Oh, it's going to be too hard. It's going to take too long. I could never do it. It's so much effort required, etc., etc. I have something. Let me see if I could find it that I wrote down that I heard that I think is perfect for this. If your mission is great enough, your fear will not be great enough to stop you. And I think you could replace fear with another word. If your mission is great enough, your procrastination will not be great enough. Whatever your particular problem is in getting something done. If your mission is great enough, your guilt, what does it say? Your guilt will not be great enough to stop you. Your fear will not be great enough to stop you. Your procrastination will not be great enough to stop you. So that's just a statement of fact. So I think that's kind of the place I came to. Like, okay, if I'm going to get this done, I can't think in a way where it works against me. I have to figure out how to think that's going to make it work. Like, yeah, it can be done. It's going to just take longer or whatever it is, but let's be thinking in a way where we don't give up and we remain enthusiastic. And I think that's like an essential skill to have to succeed at anything, materially or spiritually. And if you can develop that kind of thinking, it'll be extremely fantastic. So if you want to write this down, it's just in the chat, just anyone could copy it. If your mission is great enough, someone want to write this down? If your mission is great enough, your fear will not be great enough to stop you. And if fear is not a problem for you, then whatever is the problem, you can just replace with the word fear. If your mission is great enough, your lethargy will not be great enough to stop you. Right? So it's all about, it's all about inspiration. And I mentioned this before, and sometimes people would say, well, how can you remain enthusiastic all the time? And I'd say, well, look what Prabhupada gave. Like, we could ask another question. How could you not be enthusiastic? Like he's come with something that could actually change the world, and it can change our lives dramatically. How could you not be enthusiastic? Doesn't make sense. When you think about it that way, it's true. I know devotees aren't always enthusiastic, but it doesn't make sense not to be when you think of it like that. Zora says, Zorde, my friend is a music teacher, and she said that once a child was brought to a teacher from Korea. There wasn't a stick. The teacher said, how can I teach without a stick? It's not possible. Different system of education. Yeah. And it's interesting because if you study different cultures, what is an outrage in one culture doesn't even get a blink of an eye in another culture, which is kind of a bit challenging when you have an international organization, because something will happen in one part of the world and there's an outrage, in another part of the world the devotees are thinking, you're just making a big deal out of nothing. So we have some challenges. Kamaniya says, thank you for explaining the context about Prabhupada used the word defeat. When I hear some devotees use it today, it tends to come across with a tinge of pride. Yeah, could. Like we're better than them? Yes. I don't see how we can connect to people with this. I just want you to know I'm better than you, so you should listen to what I say. No. I was talking to this guy brother, and he was saying some people come to him as a disciple. They want him to be their Siksha guru. And so he says something funny. He says, well, that's okay. When I'm speaking and it's true, then I'm your Siksha guru. When I'm speaking and it's not true, I'm not your Siksha guru. So that's, that's the kind of humility we need, right? I could make a mistake. It's possible. And it should be admitted. And sometimes, you might make a joke, but it offends somebody, and you just don't know. So, of course, Kamaniya, we know that when a devotee is advancing, they don't think they're better. But what you say is true, because it's easy to think or feel one is better when one knows more. When one knows what someone else doesn't know, you naturally feel better. So we have that problem. And anyone who has great knowledge tends to feel themselves better than those who don't have that knowledge. And objectively speaking, they are in a better position. So I think it's better for us to think, okay, I know something that my neighbor doesn't know, so I'm in a better position. Does that make me better? Not necessarily. And a devotee can think, well, since I know what he doesn't know, then I should be much better than him or her. Am I? And the answer might be, not so much. Not as much maybe as I should be. So there are ways of thinking that can keep you humble, or not keep you, bring you down to be humble, and keep you there once you're there. And there are ways of thinking that will cause you to become proud. And sometimes those ways of thinking are the same. It's just the angle with which you're looking at it and how you're processing it. You're processing the same information. But ultimately, a devotee would not feel better, at least not an advanced devotee. So, but I think the most important point is we're not out to defeat people. We're out to help them as best we can understand Krishna consciousness. You know, we don't come home counting how many people we defeated at the end of the day and say, well, I'm successful because I defeated so many people. No, at a certain context, it may be necessary. You might be challenged by someone. You say you believe this, and then you're thinking, okay, I have to defeat this. But it's not like I have to defeat him. I have to defeat his ideas to establish the validity of Krishna consciousness. So some people want to defeat the person. We just want to defeat the philosophy. That's all. We're happy to be friends with a person and like that, and happy to disagree and show them what we believe and not be angry with them like that. So I think sometimes we conflate both, the person's got a philosophy that I don't think is logical or even its ramifications of the philosophy are detrimental. So I don't like the philosophy, therefore I don't like the person who espouses the philosophy. Generally, we didn't see Prabhupada like that. But, if someone's adamant about blaspheming Krishna by making Krishna a nothing, then sometimes it becomes our duty to expose that in public because people are listening. And so it's not just a one-on-one. If it's a one-on-one, you could just say, oh, whatever you think, I don't believe it. You don't have to waste your time. But if people are listening, like it's a lecture or a group is surrounding you in public, they want to know what you want to say. You have to defeat. But if you try to defeat a person, nobody wants to be defeated, so they'll just keep fighting. So if you really want to help somebody, don't try to defeat them because you put them on the defensive. And even if you explain that they're wrong, they won't admit it because now they're admitting defeat. Whereas if it's a conversation about what's true, not about who's right, then you can make progress. And sometimes you may have to explain that. You say, let's just look at what's right. It's not about who's right. I could be wrong, you could be wrong, but let's try to come to some deeper understanding of what's true. And if it's true, we can both celebrate. And it's not about who figures it out or who's better. That's a better way to explain things. Otherwise, if the person feels you're trying to defeat them, it doesn't matter what you say, they will not accept it because then they feel like they've been destroyed. Isn't it? Have you seen that before in your life? I've seen it. It's you can't divorce a person's psychology from how you approach them, because just because something is right doesn't mean it gets in. So you have to figure out how to get it in. And the more there's trust, the more that people will be able to listen. The less there's trust, the less they can listen. So teachers have to create trust. And teachers have to be able to trust their students, that the students will understand and apply what they're learning and not use it for the wrong reason. Comenius says, thank you. A takeaway for me is regarding using terms like defeat, etc., is that Srila Prabhupada was the embodiment of compassion. And neophyte students like me cannot imitate him, as we are far from being on the same platform. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't come off when you imitate Mahabhagavat. You can't really pull it off right. He could say things to people that was for their transformation. People like me don't have that spiritual potency. Well, also Prabhupada said, an old man or a young child can get away with saying anything, or most things. People are like, oh, it's just an old man, don't bother him. He's just a kid, leave him alone. So that's why sometimes Prabhupada would get heavy. I mean, there are different reasons he would get heavy, but sometimes he would get heavy because he knew it would help the person, and he could get away with it because he was the age of their grandfather. And Prabhupada told us we can't do that. Well, maybe I could do it now because I'm the age that he was when he was doing it. But, with a 20-year-old, yeah, maybe I could get away with it. 20-year-old is like 20-year-old would be a grandson or granddaughter for me. Even 24-year-old could be. Yeah. Yes. 20. Yeah, why not? Yeah. The goal of spreading Krishna consciousness is to make people Krishna conscious. The goal is not to defeat them. And the goal in and of itself is not just to explain the philosophy. It's to explain the philosophy in a way that people can understand it, appreciate it, and practice it. So, someone may think, well, a teacher is someone who explains something. Not exactly. A teacher is someone who gets the students to understand something, not someone who explains something, because explaining doesn't mean that they got it. But I explained everything. It was clear. They just didn't get it. That's your fault. No, but I explained it. Yeah, but they didn't understand it. So your job is to get them to understand it, whatever it takes. So that's how you evaluate your success as a teacher, by the result. So Jairati wants me to write that book. Yeah, I'll do it the first chance I get. But I'll have to write all these ideas down, Secrets of success of the great souls, of the servants of the great souls. What Krishna Karshani says, what if a devotee is envious, seeing non-devotees happy? They're reading in Shastras, but devotees are happy. They're reading in Shastras that devotees are happy, but non-devotees, I think you're saying, you read in Shastra, devotees are happy, not the non-devotees. But we see that often it is opposite. Devotees are at least seeming to be opposite. Non-devotees at least seeming to be more happy than devotees. Yes, that's true because they drink more alcohol than devotees. But if you go home and talk to them and see how miserable they are, yeah, you have to go behind the scenes. Because on the street, they're having a good time with their friends, and they're trying to forget all their miseries. And often those good times are aided with some substances to help aid the happiness. But when they come home and lament that their boyfriend just ran off with their best friend, and they have a job they hate, or they're stressed out by school. You know, when you get behind the scenes, if you let people talk to you, whoa, you find out. You find out what's really going on behind the scenes. I told this story. I don't know if you remember the story, Krishna Karshini, but I had this friend who, like, every month had a different girlfriend. And I was like, oh man, I like to be like him. You know, this is the life, you know. And one day he said, you know, I'm totally miserable, totally depressed. And I was in shock. I was like, how could you be depressed? You have a girlfriend every month. Well, yeah, that means he doesn't have any love in his life. It's just lust and, you know, no real relationship. And I was too young to figure that out. But, you know, it's like when you get behind the scenes of those smiles are, you know, it's just like, it's like those, you know, those faces you put over your face, the big smile, and then you take them away and you're crying. It's a bit like that. But it is true that when you give up material life and you give up sense gratification, there may be some period in your life where you're not experiencing much ecstasy in Krishna consciousness, and you've left your sense gratification, and all you basically have left is rasgulas and halava, and that's it. So I recommend lots of dancing and chanting and book distribution, because it's fun. You can have fun with people. I had so much fun on book distribution. I was so funny with people. I really loved it. So, you know, you have to find things in Krishna consciousness that you really like to do. A lot of devotees now, because of technology, are making beautiful videos, making music. You know, it's all on the computer. You don't have to have a lot of money. So, you know, you have to find something that inspires you. And then do that, and you'll be okay. And you can also eat halava, but not too much. And, you know, we're giving up sense gratification. We're giving up a lot of sense gratification. That's like no little thing. So, yes. And non-devotees kind of like, you know, just dousing their senses as much as possible. So they are happy for the time being. But when they get home, I don't know about that, right? I always think, well, if you're so happy, why do you have to drink alcohol? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, alcohol dumbs you down. It numbs your consciousness. If you're so happy, why would you want to numb your consciousness? Like, could you imagine you're in the, like, ecstatic kirtan jumping to the ceiling, like, Haribol! And a Prabhu comes in. Well, here's a pill. Here's a pill. It will numb your consciousness. You think, well, I want to numb my consciousness. This is ecstasy. So you understand what I'm saying. So here's the statement. If your mission is great enough, your fear will not be great enough to stop you. Yeah. Or your procrastination, or your anxiety, or your stress, or whatever it is that's stopping you. Christy says, we were talking about this with some devotees. When you have a clear goal, no difficulties will stop you because you will find a way out. But even though we know we are striving to become pure devotees, few of us actually believe this deep in our hearts. What, that we can become pure devotees? As a result, don't have a clear goal to fight for. You're close to become a pure devotee, but as I've said 108 times in the past, I was just reading the Chutananda's comment. As I've said in the past, you don't have to become a pure devotee because that's your nature. You just have to get all the things out of the way that are preventing your pure devotionalness to manifest. So that's a better way of thinking, isn't it? I'll never become a pure devotee. It's impossible. It's days of Brahma away. How will I ever do it? Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. You don't have to do it. You already are. Just, get the stuff out of the way and let it shine. Let it shine through, brother. Get it out of the way. You'll be fine. So if you think that way, then it's not a question of is it possible, is it not possible. It's just a question of moving some boulders out of the way. So, yeah. That's the goal. That's the goal. What's the difference between you and a pure devotee? You got a lot of stuff in the way that he doesn't. That's all. So when you get that stuff out of the way, then you're off, back to Godhead. No problem. That's your nature. And as I said many times, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but I think we were saying this on Monday. No, not Monday. We didn't have class Monday. Maybe on Wednesday I was saying this, or last week. When you go back to God, no, I was saying it on Wednesday because Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying everything is Maya. Everything in this world is Maya, right? Everywhere you look, it's just Maya. Yeah, and everywhere you look in the liberated state is Krishna. In the spiritual world, there's only Krishna. There's no Maya. So, how about that, right? That sounds really nice, doesn't it? Don't you think? So that there will come a time when there'll only be Krishna and no Maya. And then you're good to go. So don't give up the ship. It's cruising. Just stay on it. You'll get there. Achyutananda says, defeated or smashed can also be sportsmanlike. People like to intellectually wrestle sometimes. Yeah. Basically, they want to defeat someone. They don't care. I don't really care if you become Krishna conscious or not. I just want to defeat you because my ego, that's what it's all about. So, if you're preaching like that, good luck. Maybe you should join the, what is it called? The debating club. Maybe that's a better place for you than ISKCON. But ISKCON is not about defeating people. It's about sending people back to Krishna. I think I had a quote like that once. This is Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's not about defeating, it's about compassion. Krishna Karshani says, I recently met a few devotees who are suffering with depression. I believe the reason of it is not being fulfilled in life, not fulfilling desires. How a devotee should deal with depression and unfulfilled desires, especially if he or she knows that most probably won't be able to fulfill these desires in this lifetime. Oh. Well, there are many causes of depression, and I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I could speak only in a general and maybe philosophical way. But one of the things that is so important and also difficult to do when one is depressed is you have to grab on to, like you're saying, you have to grab onto something that gives you a reason to get out of bed, right? And so depression is often due to a lack of feeling any value in your life, right? Isn't it? I mean, if it's not like a chemical imbalance or something, or due to some trauma, deep trauma, but more like just going through life and realizing that this is how it's going to be. And what I personally do, one of my secrets, I try to isolate Krishna consciousness from everything else in my life. If there's a time in my life where the other things outside of Krishna consciousness are really depressing, because sometimes depression is not an internal thing, it's circumstantial. It's just you're in a depressing situation. I got caught at the airport on my way to India, for like 24 hours in the airport and got out at midnight. It's a little depressing. I mean, I was okay. Hearing chanting and singing bhajans with the police. They were also singing with me. That was kind of fun. But you know what I'm saying, that sometimes the external situation just may be kind of blah. What I try to do is isolate that external situation or what's going on in my life from my sadhana and let my sadhana shine through without being influenced by what's happening. Kind of, you could say forget that that's going on, at least while I'm doing my sadhana. And so then I find my place, my pleasure, my inspiration, my happiness in hearing and chanting and seeing the deity and associating with devotees. And so even though existentially my life may be a mess, but that's going on. So that sadhana, that, whatever it is, kirtan, whatever it is, going to a festival. So I think that's important, to learn. All of us need to learn how to get the juice out of Krishna consciousness. Like, how do you juice this fruit? Well, you don't. You can juice an orange or a lemon or grapefruit in a different way than you would juice an apple. So you have to have different tools. So I think that's the question everyone has to ask. Okay, I'm a devotee and I need to get juice from this process. How do I get it? What do I have to do? For me particularly, and start thinking about it. And where can I get my juice? Where can I get my purpose? I think for some people it can get so bad that they lose complete touch with any kind of purpose. So then you have to help them see their value, see where their fire is, what burns under them, what inspires them. What do they appreciate about life? What do they appreciate about Krishna consciousness? What do they appreciate about themselves? You have to get some appreciation in there. And I've always found that no matter how difficult Krishna consciousness is, it's always appreciable, even if it's difficult, right? So you can always appreciate it. Even if it's hard for you at this time, it's still beautiful, right? Some things we may not experience the way we'd like to, but we can at least appreciate. This is beautiful. I can appreciate it. I may not feel it deeply, but I can understand. I'm fortunate that I have it. It's very valuable. It's very sweet. It's a deep treasure of knowledge, of rasa. That's what we have to do as devotees. And we have to remind ourselves every day that I'm in this ocean of nectar, but I may be on the shore, but the nectar is there. The ocean is there. Something like that. Because I don't know the specifics of that devotee, but that's a general one of many answers. I don't know if that answer was helpful for what you were asking. If not, you could ask again. Kavanija says, some people want to defeat the person. We just want to defeat the philosophy. Well, I guess I said that. Sometimes we conflate both. I don't like the philosophy, therefore I don't like the person who espouses the philosophy. Generally, we didn't see Prabhupada like that. That's like, hate the sin, not the sinner. Yeah, that's a good quote. You want to put it on Facebook? Nadia. And then we'll get some people, no, Prabhupada did defeat them. He didn't, You can't say that. Anyway, hopefully they'll understand. Look at what's right, not who's right. Yeah. If it's a conversation about what's true rather than who's right, then we can make some progress. If a person feels that you are trying to defeat them, then they will not affect it because they will feel destroyed. Accept it. They will feel destroyed. Yes, it's true. True. Personal experience, but you know that from your own experience. If someone's trying to defeat you, and they finally defeat you, you go, no, I'm not going to admit it, Isn't it? Achyutananda says, you can't divorce a person's psychology from how you approach them. Yeah. It's so important. Is psychology important? Yeah, understanding people's psychologies. It's kind of essential in communication. Regarding non-devotees looking more happy than devotees, the expression comes to mind, ignorance is bliss. I had this problem when I was becoming a devotee, because when I would go to the temple, they would say, you're suffering. And I'd go out in the street and I'd say, it doesn't look like anybody's suffering out here. You know, it's a college town, parties and, you know, hippies all over playing music. And nice weather, beautiful girls, lots of marijuana. Come on, this is the life. I had such a hard time understanding. Then I go back to the temple. You know, I was going to temple like every 2 days. I go back to the temple. And then I'd hear it again. You're suffering. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like, my parents pay my rent. They give me money to go to school. I've got like a few classes. Hardly have to study. What are you talking about? I'm suffering. I have no idea what you're talking about. So sometimes it takes a while to understand, you know, what that means. You know, so I think the way I see it is a lot of people are smiling, but inside they're not, you know, or they're smiling temporarily. I think that's probably more common. You know, we're smiling temporarily, but not smiling all the time. John is going to give us some info on depression, because this is his field, one of his fields. Mild depression can be a sign of hope. Sometimes it means something needs to change. Oh, that's nice. So you're thinking, okay, I'm going down the wrong road. That's depressing, but at least you're thinking you're going on the wrong road. So your depression turns you around, yeah. In terms of Krishna consciousness, I think when you find your service, you find the sadhana that inspires you and the service that inspires you, you would avoid going down that rabbit hole of just losing inspiration. Because, you know, losing inspiration, number one, depression follows in the wake of losing inspiration. I don't feel like doing anything. And then what follows that is inspiration to engage with Maya. Nadia says, everything is Krishna, nothing is Maya. The only Maya that exists in this world is our own inability to see Krishna's loving hand behind everything and everyone. Yes, exactly. Stephanie says, on the juicing analogy, could you say that the joy of Krishna consciousness is already in us and we need to find the right thing or tool to bring it out? Yeah, but the right thing or tool, yeah, is specific service. It's relationships, it's sadhana, it's and then by sadhana I mean so many things within sadhana: worshiping deities or hearing, associating with devotees, being at the temple, being on pilgrimage. So, yeah. So that's the job of every devotee. Find your bliss. How should we say that? What do they say? Find your bliss. Is that what they say? No, there's some saying, right? Dance to your own music. Yeah, but something like that. Find your bliss. Whoops, it's time to go. And we're at the last question. Okay. You can join us on japa if you want. Now, as every japa session, I'm supposed to give an inspiring talk about japa. And I'm totally caught off guard because I just finished this class and then, ta-da! We go right into japa and I'm supposed to like shift modes. You'll see me if you come. Like I'm sit there and go, okay. Because normally I think about it beforehand. Oh, the challenges of life. Hare Krishna. So, Krishna Karshani, job of every devotee is to find their bliss. Yeah. Save your Krishna Karshani, save your question for next time. Or somebody save it. Because we have to deal with this issue. Enthusiastic. Be enthusiastic. Okay, Hare Krishna. We'll see you later. Maybe in another minute we'll see you. Hare Krishna.